I flew overseas on a whim, and all of the belief in the world that I would at least get through the first round, and then got all rejected within like the first week. To be honest, after that, I kind of gave up. I was like, I'm not going to go back to the UK to study, because what's the point of flying all the way there if I'm just going to get rejected at the first round of everything?
Nathania Ong,
who is starring as Eponine in the West End production of Les Misérables.
I was literally just one of the acts on that night, and I have no idea how people suddenly started watching it and started like giving me credit for that. But yeah, so I think it's such an incredible moment to have been cast in that role. I just feel really, really lucky to have been given that chance. I was cut the first time I auditioned for Eponine. I think I was cut the penultimate, like just before the final. So hey, you know, like even if you fall down, you got to get up and try again.
What made you decide to give it a shot and apply again?
My best friend came and she was like, okay, let's look at the schools that are auditioning in Singapore then. This has been your dream, like you've wanted to be independent, you've wanted to live in another city for a while. This is your chance, why don't you do it? And I was like you make a valid point.
Curious question, have you ever gotten stage fright before?
I developed stage fright while I was in Les Mis. To be honest, like I think I developed stage fright because of all of the attention. I would, every day where I would step on stage for about the span of a month, I would forget the words and I'd mix up the order, or I'd like fumble them, and then I'd have to like breathe and like get myself back in and then just like complete the song. But
Okay, so why not introduce yourself very briefly? You know, your name, what do you do?
Hi, my name is Nathania Ong. I'm an actress. I'm mostly based in the UK and Singapore. Very recently back in Singapore, but I've spent the last 5 years in the UK schooling and then going and doing a little bit of acting on the stage, all of that fun stuff.
Beautiful. So yeah, so before we get into the theatre and the arts, tell me more about yourself. Like, what do you enjoy doing in your free time away from the arts?
Okay. Well, I think this was a little while ago, but when I was younger, I used to love competitive cheerleading. So I did competitive cheerleading for about like 7-8 years of my life. But obviously, since I moved to the UK, that hasn't been an option. So instead, what do? Take nice walks in the UK, eat some really nice food. I really like cooking. But when I'm back in Singapore, it's too hot. So you know what I do? I play Mobile Legends. That's what I do. I love Mobile Legends, but I'm not very good.
Nice. I mean, yeah, I mean, I totally get that. Singapore is so hot, and you know, I cook myself in all the time in Singapore because it's that hot. I don't like the humidity. And like yourself, I mean, you've been in the UK for 5 years, and before last year, I was living on the Gold Coast in Australia for the past 3 to 4 years. And I mean, I go out. It's so different, right? I go out every single day over there, you know, because it's so different. The humidity is good. The weather is different. A lot of nature, a lot of things to discover. I'm not saying Singapore, there's not a lot of things, but there's a difference, especially in the weather. Yeah. So
I think they like to say what it's like, it's integrated green city. I think it's what they try to say, but it's really like it's concrete and then they stick a plant and then it's like wow, integrated greenery. No, I'm joking. Singapore is really, really beautiful. I'm not knocking it whatsoever, but obviously it's a very, very densely populated island, and so you're just constantly around people all the time.
yeah, so I mean, let's build up on that. So tell me more about your experience in the UK. How is it living there compared to Singapore? You know, do you get to do a lot of traveling? How was the food there compared to Singapore?
I would say I really enjoy time in the UK as well. I think I enjoy Singapore and the UK for like different reasons. Like obviously being back in Singapore, I have most of my family here. But like when I'm back in the UK, I kind of have a little bit more independence. I get to like hang out with friends a little bit more. I think the weather, like I used to say, like I feel like grass is always green on the other side. So whenever I'm in the UK, I'm like, I miss Singapore weather. But what is there to miss about Singapore weather? It's hot or it's raining. So realistically, I don't know why I was lying. But being back here now, I'm like, I really miss the weather in the UK. In terms of the food, I think that sorry UK, I think that Singapore wins like the street food or like the cheaper food aspect and also like variety. But I feel like both with Singapore and the UK, they're quite like multicultural cities. Well, I feel like it's a different demographic of people. So, for example, I'll get better Caribbean food when I'm in the UK, but I feel like Korean food here is in absolute abundance everywhere. But also there's lots of like really cheap food alternatives with like local food that I've grown up with. So there's that idea of like familiarity as well. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, do you have a lot of fish and chips there? Is the fish and chips good?
I think you're like it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I feel like fish and chips here is really expensive, but like fish and chips there is like it's like your classic like pub food staple,
Yeah.
and pub culture is absolutely a thing. Like the British drink so much, like they're
Wow.
always having a pint, like after a show, probably not before a show, but some people do it. I'm not going to judge, but yeah, definitely. Like I feel like fish and chips, like steak and ale pies, like I feel like they're pretty readily available, and they're pretty good, like pretty fresh, pretty crispy. Can't complain, you know.
Wonderful. So, I think I agree with you on that because I have British friends as well. Yeah, it's a lot of drinking going on, like boys' night, girls' night, and so much. Yeah. So
Can't keep up.
exactly. So yeah. So let's dive more into the art. So how did your love for the arts all begin?
I think I started my love for the arts when I was younger. So I did a performance when I was like 6 years old for like Total Defense Day in front of the late President Nathan. And I was mostly a singer. So I sang with my sister at the time. We sang Home by Kit Chan, the classic.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous, but for some reason, like I could sing. And my sister, when I ask her now, she says she remembers it completely different because I was like, oh, I could only sing because my sister was there with me. And then she actually said, she was like, I stood there because she was so nervous. And I was like, oh, well, who's right? I don't know. But yeah, I think that was definitely where my love for singing started because it was like that rush of adrenaline before you step on the stage and while you're on the stage, and then it just whizzes by you and suddenly you've done a really great thing, or maybe it wasn't so good and you just don't remember it, you know? And I think it's just like that adrenaline rush that kind of gave me like that thirst for like performance and like performing. I did mostly singing for most of my life and peeled into a JC program through drama. And so that was kind of where I did my first little bit of acting. And then I decided, oh, wow, there's this, like I had that exposure to like this magical world where I could sing, dance, and act, which was apparently musical theater. And so I tried to apply for like acting, like for straight acting courses in my first year of university, flew to the UK, and I booked like a month-long trip to be there. But I was unfortunately very swiftly rejected within the first week for all the schools. And so I had about 3 weeks to sit there and wallow in self-pity. But obviously, like it cost me a lot of money to like fly there at the time because, being a student, you don't have the funds. And then, so because of that, I was like, I couldn't sit there for a month. I cut my trip short and then I came back to Singapore. And then I applied for LaSalle as well. And then I managed to get in on that. I was in LaSalle for about a year. And that was really, really helpful, actually, because I think it gave me quite a strong foundation to acting, apart from just like being in JC and just like having a little bit of fun while performing, and then I think from there I was like, okay, one thing led to the other, and then I ended up in the UK again, doing instead a degree in musical theatre rather than straight acting.
I see. So, okay, let me get this correct. So, when was the point you realized that you wanted to take theater really seriously, like to a whole new level? Was it at the point where you finished JC, or was it at the point where you sort of towards the end of LaSalle?
In the end of JC, I, like, to be completely candid, I was failing all my subjects,
Yeah.
and I wasn't very smart so it's like, so I was like, okay, well, I can really struggle and pursue something that I don't enjoy as much and I'm not very good at, or I could do this thing that I feel like I am a little better at and that I do really, really enjoy, that I'm passionate about. And I think that I've been really fortunate because my family is very supportive. Like, I'm the youngest child of like 4 girls, and so I feel like the first 3 took the brunt of all of the weight of the hard parenting, and then I rocked up, and then they were like, you can do what you want now. So I decided to do theater and singing and dancing and playing pretend. So I think that was the end of JC, was really where I started kind of pursuing like performing arts a bit more seriously.
Nice. And you also mentioned earlier that you were rejected by all the drama schools that you applied for in the UK after your A levels. I mean, at the end of JC. I mean, how did that really feel back then? Would you consider it one of the lowest points in your life?
I mean, I think definitely. Like, I don't think it's like, I know that there's definitely people who have had like harder lives, but I think that all of people's experiences and everyone's struggles are all like personal and like detailed to them, you know? Like, if you haven't felt something before in your life and you're suddenly confronted with that, then that's going to hit you differently than someone who has experience and who has pursued that before, you know? And so I think for me, I lived quite a sheltered life when I was living in Singapore, youngest of four girls, and my parents flew overseas on a whim. Big hopes, big dreams, and all of the belief in the world that I would at least get through the first round. You know, I think for me it was like, I was like, you know, at least I'm trying this. You know, like hopefully like someone will give me a chance and like I'll just get through a first round, because I applied for like 5 schools or something.
Yeah.
Um, and then got all rejected within like the first week. And it was a really expensive mistake at the time, because at the time my family's finances weren't super stable. I had kind of I was working part-time jobs in order to try and pay the flight there and everything and accommodation. Thank God I could have stayed with a friend. So I did stay with a friend. But like, I was sat there expecting to be like to do something in the month, and then suddenly having nothing to do. And I think it was that like reality, and also like a little bit of not, I wouldn't say ignorance, but a little bit of innocence kind of being lost at recognizing that like, the world is like harder than I thought it was going to be, you know? And yeah, and I think it was just like the idea of sitting there and just not having anything to go back to, and to have to fly back to Singapore after spending all of this money defeated. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. So I mean, it felt like that month had a lot of new realizations for you, especially at that age.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, after that, I kind of gave up. I was like, I'm not going to go back to the UK to study, because A, I can't afford to do it again. B, what's the point of flying all the way there if I'm just going to get rejected at the first round of everything for like
Yeah.
like not just one school. It's not like I didn't have fallbacks, but I applied for a bunch of schools and then just got rejected, you know? So I think for me, it felt like a very costly mistake to a young student at the time who was like on her own 2 feet for the first time.
Definitely, definitely. It's like in a really uncertain position as well when you went there for a month. But then
Yeah.
what made you decide to give it a shot and apply again?
Oh, so the next time that I applied, I had like my best friend has been my friend since I was really, really young. And I was in LaSalle at the time doing the straight acting course, and I was on the first year of the BA for a 3-year program. And then I found out, like, I found out that like audition season was kind of rolling around again. But I couldn't, like, I was like, I can't afford to fly to the UK and like go through all of that hassle to do first round auditions, to get rejected on the spot again, to have wasted all of that money. I was like, I just can't do it. But then my best friend came and she was like, okay, well, she was like, let's look at the schools that are auditioning in Singapore then. Like, because there were a few at the time. I think there was like there was like East 15, there was like Central, and there was Mount View, which was it was their first year auditioning in Singapore, like properly. And basically, I missed all of the auditions because I'd given up, and I literally hadn't even considered it. Like, I just wasn't planning on doing that. And then my best friend was like, okay, well, she was like, you have to at least try. Like, this has been your dream. Like, you've wanted to be independent. You've wanted to live in another city for a while. Like, this is your chance. Why don't you do it? And I was like, well, I don't have the money. I can't afford it. I can't do it. I can't disappoint myself again. And then she was like, just try. And if you get rejected, you get rejected. And I was like, well, you make a valid point. So I literally went on the website, I searched Mount View applications. I applied on the final day of their closing, of the application closure. And so I applied on the day that the applications were closing. I got given an audition. I just went for the audition, like hoo-ha, whatever. And then luckily got recalled for the finals. But the finals were live and in person. And so I was like, again, money, a really, really big thing. So just really struggled with that. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is something I really want to do, I'm one step further than I was previously, even though it was only one school this time instead of 5. I was like, let's just take a shot in the dark. And so I paid it. But I had to work like 3 part-time jobs concurrently to pay that flight. And I got to stay with the same person, bless her, for housing me during that period. Honestly, MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got there, and I feel like every gate along the way was shut and was like slightly ajar to like let me slip through the crack. So like I had to fly on the final day of my I think it was like my final assessment performance, which was a 4-act play
Yeah.
of not Hello Dolly. It's the play version of it. I can't remember what it's called. But yes, basically had to do that. It was 4-act play. I had to get cut from the final act so that I could shower in the theater while the show was still
Wow.
going on, to meet my dad outside, to jump on the plane, to fly, to land 2 hours before the audition, because the UK is behind in time,
Yeah.
whereas Singapore's ahead. So I was traveling back in time. If not, I wouldn't have made it. If not, I would have missed the audition. So yeah, I feel like everything along the way was saying no and then slightly ajar. So I just slipped through the crack to kind of like run my way into the audition. And I felt so out of depth. It was so funny. Like everyone was in like ballet tights and like leotards, like tight like ballet buns,
Yeah.
and I was there like barefoot in like a stripy t-shirt and leggings. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, but hey, it happened. And then by some stroke of luck, I managed to get in.
Sounds so hectic, but I think, I mean, it happened for a reason, and I'm so happy for you to be where you are now. And just talking about that, like, don't they put like the process, like how it works? Like, I mean, when you spoke about how everyone was in leotards and you were in a shirt and pants.
I mean, they were just like, I feel like generically they just say
Yeah.
dance wear, because
Yeah.
obviously different people have different dance wear. Like some people wear like foot thongs, or like some people like they'll wear like bike tars instead of leotards and things. And it's like just depends on the person and like your upbringing. And my upbringing was none. So I rocked up in literally, yeah, like not really having dance experience. And yeah, but hey, it turned out okay in the end. There was this hilarious moment. Where they were like, okay, I was like, I can't dance. I think that is so apparent. And then they were like, okay, well, can anyone do any tricks? And I was just like, ooh, something I can finally do. And so I raised my hand and then I did a round off back tuck in the audition room, like in the dance studio. And I swear it was angel's wings on my feet or something, but I flew over the instructor's head, who was like
Oh my
6
gosh.
foot something. And I was like, that is the highest back tuck I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Safe to say it was never that high ever again, but they didn't need to know that, so it was fine. And also like there were so many things, like I just messed up so much and I have no idea how I got in.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just really owe it to like people and their kindness, and people giving other people a chance when I guess I didn't necessarily like deserve it, but they kind of saw something in me and they believed in me enough to let me in the school, to be like, hey, she has some kind of potential, like let's just see where this goes, you know?
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, and I saw, I mean, only 38 gets in out of like
Yeah,
2,500 applicants. So
yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And honestly, I mean, your 2 friends, I mean, your best friend that asked you to give it a shot and apply again, and your other friend who you stayed with in the UK. I mean, they're amazing. I mean, like you
Oh my
said,
gosh.
MVPs. They're MVPs.
MVPs, absolutely, please.
Wonderful friends. And so yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, backtracking a bit, like, how was it like juggling, 3 jobs concurrently? Like, what gave you the strength to carry on, to sacrifice, and do those jobs,
Um,
simultaneously?
to be honest, um, you do because you do lah. Like if you have to eat to survive, you have to eat to survive, you
Yeah.
know? And it was so funny because like at that time I was just really conscious of money. And so I literally remember that whenever I went to meet my friends, this was me being a bit stupid as well, because like I could have put spread or something, but I would literally like follow my friends and like sit with like a Ziploc bag of bread, like plain bread. I just did no toppings, no spread, just ate plain bread and like snuck it under the table and drank tap water, and that was it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's not like I couldn't eat. Like, it's just like I don't know. Like, in my head, I was like,
Yeah.
like pennies helped. Like, for me, pennies really, 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 really helped. And I think my parents looked at me and they were like, "You're delusional." But I just didn't want to like burden them anymore. You know, like I just didn't want them to feel like hassle. Like, they've already sacrificed so much for me, especially the first time.
Mm.
So I was like, this is something like I want to try and do myself. You know.
I mean,
Yeah.
back then also, like a period of time, I had done the same thing, and I'll just use the excuse that I'm dieting to my friends.
Oh
That's the
no.
best. No, but seriously, but yeah, I mean, okay, let's move on. I wanted
Also,
to
sorry, that sounds like a really interesting story, and I actually really want to hear about that because that sounds so interesting. Like, what was that like for you? Like, were you just really strapped on cash, or like were you saving for something, or?
Yeah, I mean, back then I was really saving. I like yourself. I was working, 3-4 jobs,
Oh my
just to
God.
just to save money because I didn't want to depend on my parents to pay for my
Mm.
university. So I actually got a few jobs, and I worked at a cafe. I did tuition. I did swim coaching, and I saved up
Wow.
all that money like since I was in my teens for just to go
Wow.
overseas to Australia. I mean, it was kind of partially sponsored, but I also had to save a lot of money, and I also saved a lot
Yeah.
of money from conscription, right? Military conscription. So everything
Oh,
everything worked in the
you
end.
kept the hairdo as well.
Yeah, it's it's
It's
good.
stuck
It's
well.
very easy to maintain. In Australia, I used to have long surfer hair, but now
Oh
it's very
no,
different.
you should have shaved it then. You don't have to pay for shampoo.
Yeah, exactly. So
Easy.
yeah, and honestly, I was working a lot back then, working out a whole lot back then also in terms of bodybuilding and training.
Mm.
So it makes sense that I was dieting, and Singaporean food, when you go out, is usually very oily and very fried, even though it tastes really nice, and you want to
Yeah.
keep it healthy. So it was good. It was good. Everything worked out in the end. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
So I
mean,
totally,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. It's good to see that everything's turning out well on episode. Hey, what's it? 28. Shout out, y'all.
Yeah.
Episode 28 now, surviving and thriving. You can have both.
Beautiful, yeah. So okay, so I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to you to be the first ever Singaporean to play Eponine in the musical? I always get this wrong, but Les Miserables. Is that it?
I
Les
think,
Miserables.
to be fair, I said it once on camera, and then
Yeah.
I instantly regretted saying the full name. Like, I was like, oh yes, well that's Les Misérables, and I was like, what? How pretentious do I
Yeah.
sound right now? I was like, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, because also, like, I guess the British, like, they say Les Miserables, and
Yeah.
then I think the French, they say Les Miserables, and then for
The
me,
short form.
I say Les Mis.
Yes,
So I'm
that's
like,
what I would say as well.
avoid it completely. Like, if I can cut corners, that's me. I'm sliced the corner already.
And the worst is I took French. I took French as my third language, so
Oh no.
yeah, I'm
Surely you should
terrible.
know that. You should be telling me how to say it.
I'm terrible at French. But anyways, what does it mean to you to play Eponine?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, I feel like, again, I'm just like, I always owe it to someone, like, because it's like you can be the most talented person in the world, but if no one gives you the chance to show it, then then you're just kind of gonna remain this unnamed figure for ages. And I think that I've been really, really fortunate to have been granted the opportunity to play such a role, like a role that I literally would watch when I was like that. I think that was like apart from Cats, that was like the only other musical that was on DVD, like the 10th anniversary, and I watched it and I was like, wow, everyone sounds so beautiful. I don't know what the show is about because I was like 4, 5,
Mhm.
I don't know. I literally can't remember. But yeah, so I think it's just it's such an incredible moment to have been cast in that role. And just, yeah, I just feel really, really lucky to have been given that chance. I actually played the role for almost 2 years, so about a year and 9 months, because I was on the UK and Ireland tour, but no one knew about it. And I think the thing that actually like kind of gave me a little bit more visibility was the Big Night of Musicals video at the Manchester AO Arena. And like I was literally just one of the acts on that night, and I have no idea how like just how it's like people suddenly started watching it and started like giving me credit for that. But again, I just feel so incredibly privileged to have been given that opportunity, and for people to have taken a chance on me to play this role. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned that like no one would ever know if that person or that one person didn't took the chance on you, didn't believe in you, didn't give you that opportunity. So I thought that's really
Mhm.
nicely put, and I thought that's very, very humble of yourself
Yeah.
to mention
Again,
that.
I was also another thing. I was actually cut first round. Sorry,
Yeah.
not first round. I was cut the first time I auditioned for Eponine. On round
Yeah.
3. I think I was cut the penultimate, like before the
Mhm.
final. So hey, you know, like even if you fall down, you got to get up and try again.
Yeah, definitely. You got to keep trying and trying and trying till you get it right. You
Mhm.
just got to get it right like once, and then you're set.
Just a quick one. I remember back when I was younger, I was going through an incredibly tough period in my life where I had no one to talk to about my problems. There was no place I could share my honest thoughts and feelings because I was just so afraid of being judged by people. And I realized that was so bad for my mental well being. It's like bottling up everything and just waiting for a day where it all explodes. So, no, we're not gonna let that happen for you. Because my team and I have developed a free social app called Huddle.so where you can share all your problems anonymously, whatever is currently on your mind that's bothering you, whatever is making you upset or giving you sleepless nights. This is a non-toxic app where you can just be yourself, heal, and make many wholesome friends that will be there for you to support you during difficult times. The app is currently available on iOS at the moment, so good news for iPhone users. But we are working really hard to get an Android version out as soon as we can, so we don't miss out on the rest of you. So trust me, download the app, give it a shot, and I guarantee you that your future you will thank you for taking care of yourself. I'll put the link in the description below as well, and I'll see you in Harvest.
But yeah,
Yeah.
anyways, there was a movie on Les Mis, right? That came out in like 2012 or something, right? And
Mm.
it was Hugh Jackman, I think, that was
Mhm.
one of the actors. And I watched the movie. I think I was like 15 or something back then.
Mhm.
And it's not supposed to be an it's just a funny story, right? After 15 minutes,
Okay.
I slept for the rest of the movie. There was like only one out of two movies in my life that I slept.
Dang.
One was Argo and the other one was Les Mis. But I gotta
I'm
catch
gonna
but I gotta catch it again. Yeah.
I'm gonna send this podcast to the creative director of Les Mis and then play it for them.
No, I think
No, I
no
won't do that.
maybe because I think it's not them. I think it's just me because maybe I was just too tired. It was at night. It was like probably like 1 a.m. I
Mm,
was catching a late night movie. I was young, and then I like Hugh Jackman, and I was like, why not? Let's give it a try. But I think I was
mhm.
just too sleepy. But I'm sure it's a brilliant musical and a
Mm.
brilliant show. It's just yeah,
I
it's
think
just me.
I honestly I kind of found like, and this isn't of no fault of anyone, but I just find that with Les Mis, it's a really sad piece. Like it's literally called The Miserable Ones. So I don't really blame you for like falling asleep because like the lighting is really dark. Like it's a bunch of big grown men singing. It's like kind of operatic.
Mm,
Um, if you're in a theater or if you're sat at home, you're in complete darkness, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I
Oh,
think
okay. Like,
I think it might be
yeah.
so good as well. Like the music and everything. The theater is just so
Mhm,
comfortable, and then so late at
mhm.
night. Yeah, but continue. Yeah.
I think for me, like the movie was good. I feel like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like with musicals and with any kind of theater, like I love watching it live, and I think it's
Mm,
so rare for the musical to outdo. Sorry,
mm,
for the movie remake to
yeah.
outdo the actual musical because I feel like it's not like there's something so like wonderful and ephemeral about sharing the air
Yeah.
with an actor because I feel like when the actor gets like that sweet spot, you can
Mm,
get goosebumps. You can get goosebumps, and you could. It's like that one moment, and that moment exists only for you as
mm,
an audience member and the actor at the time, and that is the only time that that moment will live. And I feel like by that extension, like for me, that's what I have fallen in love with regards to theater. And I know that not necessarily everyone is going to feel the
yeah.
same way. Like I know that it's not very widely consumed in Singapore,
Mm,
um, which although it would be absolutely amazing for people to consume it a bit more, um, it really is just like incredible. Yeah, it's just in terms of theater and everything.
no,
And
hundred
I
percent.
wish that more people watched it.
No, I love the way you put it, and no, that's definitely my experience was definitely on me, and I feel like I did not appreciate as much as I could. I mean, I was young, I was immature, I was rash. You can't even believe it back then, but definitely I gotta
Hey,
catch it
if
again.
you come to my concert, I promise you won't fall asleep.
Oh no,
I'll
100%,
keep
hundred
you
percent.
awake.
I gotta come to the UK, right? Are you doing it? Are you still doing it in the UK, like in the
No,
future?
actually, well, I'll be going back to the UK in January. But at the moment, me and my producer, we're working on a charity concert for the
Hmm.
end of the year.
Yeah,
So it's going to be on the 20th of December, in the Esplanade Concert Hall.
sweet.
And it is going to be in aid of the Business Times Budding Artist Fund, and it's in conjunction with like Rice and stuff
Yeah,
as well, like the Rice Company. It's going to be a really wonderful time. I'm going to be singing some kind of familiar songs, if you can kind of guess what they may be. But also, I'm going to be revisiting some songs that I maybe sang when I was younger, and I'm going to be re-looking at with like fresh perspective. But also, first time sung ever for a public audience, some songs that I just love singing, and have never gotten to see the light of day because I haven't either been cast in them, or like I guess that like there's some like R&B pop stuff that I don't necessarily get to sing that much because I don't have the platform to. We're also going to be doing some fresh arrangements of songs that might be familiar to you. So maybe a little bit of Disney, just hinting about that, a little bit of like hammy bands. But yeah, definitely, it's going to be a really, really good time. It's for an amazing cause, because the Business Times Budding Artist Fund supports underprivileged children to pursue the arts if they don't necessarily have the financial means, which I think, from my experience, is something that is very, very close to my heart. I don't want anyone to have to be in that position again.
you were in Mount View, and that was during COVID, right?
Yeah.
And you were away from family for quite 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 a significant amount of time. So
Yeah.
in a way, you're kind of alone. I mean, you had friends and stuff, but you're kind of alone. But
Mm.
how did it feel back then, like during COVID? Like, what went through your mind? Your family's away from you.
Mm, well, actually, I spent like a portion of COVID back home. So I
Yeah.
spent about three and a bit months
Hmm.
back in Singapore. But obviously, I was so annoyed because I was in what was it called? Oh, I was in quarantine at the time for the first 2 weeks of being back, and then like I came back to Singapore because London had shut and Singapore was still open,
Oh yeah.
even though like restrictions were quite tight and things. Literally honestly, the day before I was supposed to be let out, we got locked into lockdown. So I was stuck back home again, and I just didn't see anyone for ages. But I mean, it was fine. I think I still had to do schooling during that period, so I kind of got to see my family from a distance. Like they drop food, I'd wave at them, and then they'd leave. Um, and I think I was kind of okay because like I was already kind of used to being apart from them, like with
Hmm.
the distance of being in another country. Um, I think it was a little bit harder once I got back to the UK, and like I think for me it was when I had shows, when I had things that I wanted to show them. Like I was really excited to show them like my third year projects, and like some people's parents like kind of wanted to come in and watch it and stuff. But my family wasn't able to do that. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise because with COVID, things were then recorded and then put online, so I could share the link back, and
Hmm.
actually let them see it. Whereas like it would have cost them a lot of money to fly over to come and watch this like end of year showcase or something. So it was kind of a blessing to have them be able to see something instead.
Yeah, I mean that's great that you put it. I mean, there's always pros and cons, right? I mean, and COVID
Mhm.
was unprecedented. So yeah, I'm really glad because I would imagine like
Definitely.
your family is very important to you in your journey, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the biggest struggle with COVID during that time was because we spent around 9 months
Hmm.
during COVID in school. So we spent almost 9 months virtually. And I think being in Singapore, the hard thing for me was the time difference because they were waking up and they were just starting classes,
Hmm.
and it was like I was like basically doing school until 2 a.m. and then going to sleep and then waking up and then trying to film things in the day to submit them to have that. Like it was all like a little bit complicated. And I was doing like ballet bar at a sink because I didn't have a ballet bar. So I just get like pruny hands every day. Oi oi. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. But yeah, I think again being in the UK kind of fortified me a little bit with not seeing my family, but obviously I would have preferred to see them a little bit more frequently. Yes.
Yeah, that's well put. And just moving back into the arts, right? Let's talk about Singapore a bit, because growing up, as a Singaporean, uh, I am an arts person. I'm a creative. I really like the arts. I like literature.
Hmm.
Back when I was studying, I like essays and all this sort of stuff that's related to the arts. But my sort of my family has always pushed me to go more into the sciences, even though I didn't like sciences. I did make the mistake to go in like pure sciences back then. And I
Hmm.
mean, I don't really regret anything in life. Right now, I'm doing something that's related to the art, anyways. Um, but what are your thoughts about the arts in Singapore? Like honestly, like is there? I mean, you've lived in the UK. You've seen how art is being treated over there. What do you think can be done better here, or what are your thoughts about the arts in this country?
I think that I can only speak from like my perspective,
Yeah,
like, and my like niche is in like
definitely.
theater, I guess. So from my experience, when I was younger, there was so much less theater around. Whereas I feel like now there's slightly more emphasis on the arts and like there's a little bit more visibility. I feel like with like movie musicals becoming quite popular like on TV and stuff as well, now there's a little bit more of an interest from like the general public. Um, I think that the thing that sets the UK apart from Singapore is it's obviously a bigger industry, but also it's much older, and I think it's been quite integrated in culture. Like, I feel like they like entertainment, and television and theater are both like such big parts of like day to day life. Like those your conversations revolve around that and things like that. Whereas I feel like with Singapore, there's so much else that like people like to talk about. Like I think food is a massive like thing. So it's like I think the conversations tend to flow around like different areas and stuff as well. But I feel like with theatre, the barriers to entry are quite high within the industry. Like it's quite a small industry, so they like to employ the same actors in various productions
Hmm.
who are obviously also incredibly talented. But if you're a newer actor who's kind of hoping to breach the industry, it becomes quite difficult because you don't necessarily have an in that respect. Um, but I do think that, well, for example, we just did Into the Woods. I did Into the Woods with Pandemonium recently, and the run was completely sold out. Um, and so I think that definitely, like, there is an interest there. If anything, if that show has proven anything, and so I just hope that there are more instances of people's perspectives being open, and for more people to consume theatre, because there's no point in raising supply if the demand doesn't rise to meet the occasion as well, Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I learned a lot from that, and I think that's a bit of, would you say, a cultural difference as well between the two countries? Like
Yeah,
Singapore would,
I
would
think
focus like on this sort of things, and the UK would focus more on this.
yeah, I think so. I think it's such a cultural thing. Like it's like I feel like for some people, like watching theater is just as easy as watching a movie. Like you're
Mm.
like, okay, like let's pay this amount of money that we would have literally used to spend on a movie, and we'll go and we'll watch a show. But then I think obviously with the UK, there's staple shows. There's shows
Yep.
that like haven't moved for time. But the thing is, like, they also like they sell quite well.
Mhm.
And actually, sorry, this has just popped into my head, but
Yeah.
actually that's a really valid point as well. But actually, I think that a really, really large part of the UK and its demographic of people who watch theatre are tourists. So not just international
Yeah.
tourists who are flying in, but also domestic tourists, because the UK is much larger than Singapore. Like the size of London, that city alone is bigger than the size of Singapore.
Mhm.
So you have domestic tourists like flying in to watch these shows and then like kind of like making it a stop on their trip. Whereas I think with Singapore, there isn't it doesn't have the
Yeah.
reputation yet to be able to garner like international tourists to come in and to watch musical theater or to watch shows, because shows don't really stick around long enough per se. And also just it's hard to get that reputation. So those are my thoughts, and I don't really have the answers to everything because I think
Yeah.
it's a
Definitely.
much bigger problem than me. So those are just my thoughts.
No, I mean that I mean, to me that's true, and it does make a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, just a segue into the last question. Do you have any tips for aspiring, students or, theater artists that would like to pursue the arts, pursue a career in the arts?
Well, sorry, I genuinely do not mean for this to be a plug,
Yeah.
but
No,
if
no, go
you
for it.
are like, if you are not in the best financial position and you still really, really want to pursue the arts and you don't necessarily have the means, then please visit like the Business Times Budding Artist Fund. There's like application pages with like means testing and things available for you as well. But it's a non-profit organization, so you can go, you can get classes, and all of that is available. It's literally at your fingertips. All you have to do is open your mouth and ask. So it's doable. It's totally doable, you know. And so there is definitely like stuff available there. I would really like to encourage you as a young actor is to start young with regards to theatre and performance, because I think like something I've learned is that the biggest thing that sets people apart is ease. If you can be comfortable on a stage enough to make choices, to be bold with those things, then that is going to be like your best friend, and that's going to maybe be the thing that sets you apart from other people. And also, like, live life, be bold, take chances, because you have one life to live. And what do you have to lose if someone tells you a no? Like, I'm still here. I've gotten so many no's, and I think that there is no harm in saying no. That's the worst that can happen, is someone says no. But you know what? You say thank you for that no, and you try again, because the world is your oyster. So perfect.
Beautifully put. Very, very, very inspirational. I love that. And it's just a curious question. Have you ever gotten stage fright before?
Oh my gosh, I genuinely, there, this is so random. I developed stage fright while I was in Les Mis
Mm.
in like 4 or 5 months before
Mm-hmm.
before I was finishing the contract. And I literally, like, it was the first line of the song. I think it was, to be honest, like, I think I developed stage fright because of all of the attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't used, like, I think that I've received so much love and so much kindness from people with regards to that video from that at the big night of musicals of me singing on my own. But also it was like, I don't think that I've ever received like hate like that as well. And so it's kind of been a big thing. Like, I've just made it a thing that I don't read reviews, I don't read comments. I really, like, I just do my best not to look at those, because one bad comment can really ruin your day.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm not looking to improve. I'm always looking to improve. But some people just, like, people love to hate, and that's okay. That's on them. But I kind of developed like stage fright during that period. And so I would, every day where I would step on stage for about the span of a month, I would mess up the words to, and now I'm all alone again, nowhere to go, no one to turn to. I would just like, sorry, that was awful because I'm really ill right now. But I would forget the words and I'd mix up the order, or I'd like fumble them, and then I'd have to like breathe and like get myself back in and then just like complete the song. But apart from that, like, first line, a part of me would actually take on those nerves and be like, ooh, this is what I've missed. Like, this is the part that's really exciting. The nervousness of the not knowing what's going to come out. And that actually egged me on as well to make different choices. So not only like was I experiencing like the worst stage fright I've had in my career, but it was also spurring me on to take on different choices that I wouldn't normally make. And so the audiences were getting a fresh performance every night, even though I was dying inside. But hey, like, even, I know it's a weird thing, but like, regardless of all of that, I still like loved my job and I was still happy to show up every day. It's just, it was that little like, oh, I have these expectations that I need to fulfill that I don't necessarily know how to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely, and I think that's amazing that how you are normalizing those experiences and those nerves. And I want to thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that, because I think a lot of people don't really see behind the scenes or how someone would personally feel in those situations. And everyone would like to glamorize and look at the positive sides of the musical and everything, but don't see the amount of work that's being put in. And sometimes, as humans, we make mistakes as well. And that's normal. We all make mistakes, just that we got to learn from them and improve ourselves and get better, right? That's just the
Yeah.
processes of life. Yeah.
For sure. Also, I think like I think a really big thing is like trying to shift your mindset, because yeah, you're nervous, but also like nervousness and excitement are so close together. And so I feel like the reason why I could get into that gear change was because I'd be like, ha, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous. And then I go, no, I am so happy. I am so excited to be doing this. And I think it was really just that passion that kind of like would force that change, and would kind of make it happen. And I get really excited for the next day, and then the next day would happen, and I'd go, huh, I'm really nervous. But maybe it was the
Yeah.
excitement that was tripping me up as well. I don't know at this
Yeah.
point.
But great, yeah. It's kind of like you're reframing the narrative in your mind, which is
Mm.
it's very powerful for the individual like yourself and people.
This is completely not even in the
Yeah.
podcast anymore. But I was listening to a different podcast a little while back, actually, almost a year back now. But I actually feel like that podcast like changed my life, because basically there was this guy who was, I think he's also a comedian. I don't know if he was a comedian, but he was so funny. Um, but basically, he had a challenge where he would aim to get told no every single day, and it was on the podcast How to Be a Better Human, which I used to listen to pretty religiously. Should probably get back into that, or maybe I should listen to this podcast. Like I'll
That'd
like
be
run or
awesome.
something and I'll just like listen to it. Yeah, it'd be great. But anyway, I listened to that podcast, and it was the idea of like destigmatizing the idea of getting a no, and like the more no's you get, you kind of just got more comfortable. You're like, oh, it's actually not that big a deal, because a lot of times when people get no's, the reason why they're hurt is because their brain goes on like a tangent. They're like, oh, they said no to me because they didn't like this about me and all of these things. And they actually link it to like the entirety of them, when actually, in actual fact, the person might have just said no at that one point in time, to that one thing, and it's not you and your value as a human being. It's just that one little bit of something you've pitched. And so he'd aspire to get a no every single day. And yeah, and he just found that it really helped him. And it's like he just like you just keep knocking on the door now until you get the yes. And I think that is something that I've tried to like employ in my life as well. Like you can get away with so much that you don't even know, so much more than you think you can. I think he asked for like donuts to be made in the shape of the Olympic rings. And the person said yes. And he wasn't expecting them to say yes. He was like,
Yeah.
oh, now we need to find another no. But you can get away with so much. You just have to ask sometimes. So it's that bravery of taking that step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. That's fantastic. I gotta listen to that podcast as well.
Mm.
Was it How to Be a Better Human?
How to Be a Better Human.
Yeah,
It's
sweet.
just one of the episodes. I can't remember which one. I favorited it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry for taking up your time with all of that.
No. Sorry for stretching your time. So I just want to thank you so
No, not
much
at all.
for coming on. I think it's been very insightful, and it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you and talking to you. I mean, you're such an amazing soul. I love our conversation. I just remember people telling me before, like I can't remember if it's a LaSalle student or something that said that if you did not start like whatever craft you're in from an early age, people kind of look at you different in the school.
Oh.
Like, is there some sense of a truth in there? Like people that are really very proficient or very skilled from a very very young age view others that just came in the scene or are new differently. I mean, yeah, just curious.
I would say I think it definitely depends on each individual, because I think from my perspective, I would never or at least like maybe I would be a bit annoyed, because I'm like, wow, you're a really good actor, but you haven't done anything like on that. So maybe it's just natural talent. But for me, I try not to despise those of humble beginnings, because you like everyone has to start somewhere.
Yes.
And a lot of actors like in Hollywood and stuff have never trained and have just rocked up and just been very good actors. There's this quote by Stanislavski. I think it's Stan the Man. But I think he says that there's no such thing as a bad actor. It's just a spectrum of how blocked you are as an actor. Maybe that's not a direct quote, but it's along those lines.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think it's a stigma. I don't know if the person who mentioned this was the fresh actor, or was the slightly more experienced actor. But either way, I think it's definitely like a perspective thing.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely like, I don't know if maybe the person felt like they were being viewed differently.
Yeah.
because they didn't have as much experience.
Mm.
But either way, I think that that's wrong. I think that if someone's taking a chance and being brave and doing something, I think you should just try and be kind, even if you're jealous, even if any number of things, like you just try your best and you just try and be kind, and that's enough.
100%. Yeah. No, it's just a thought that just popped in my head because I just remembered someone. I think it was someone new that just got into LaSalle, and then that person was feeling that way. But like you said, everyone has a story, everyone has a different perspective, so we do not know the full story behind that. But
Also, maybe they did have a bad experience. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much and for coming on, and pleasure to meet you, and I hope you have a great weekend ahead and rest that throat, and heal, recover, see a doctor maybe. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I might have to. It's getting pretty bad. I've had this for like a week.
Health comes first, yeah? Okay, so
Yes,
take care
sure.
and see you. Have a good night, yeah? Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So I have pretty bad social anxiety. On some days, not every day, it varies, and so you don't have to be confident, you just have to act confident.
Short and sweet. I love that.